Observe a crowd and you see isolated minds, a chaotic collision of distinct worldviews. Under specific conditions, that chaos snaps into a precise, synchronized alignment. These shared realities form and persist for centuries without relying on physical force or temporary emotional contagion. The ODTOE framework defines collective belief as a multi-agent synchronization problem governed by strict mathematical laws. By utilizing structural coupling and fixed-point attractors, we can model the trajectory of any ideology. This removes the need for theological or metaphysical assumptions. This process begins at the level of the individual observer, scaling upward into a multi-generational structure called a common tree. At its maximum theoretical scale, this model reveals the absolute observer, a mathematical limit defining the horizon of human cooperation. We can calculate the viability of these systems using a falsifiable equation that maps the lifespans of historical movements. Treating belief as a computable state allows us to identify the structural requirements for a tradition to survive for thousands of years, rather than collapsing within a few decades. Before we can network a civilization, we must define the internal state of a single observer. This visualizes the belief state, a value between 0 and 1, determined by 4 variables. Attention, focus, and energetic match measure concentration and structural alignment. Inverse decoherence accounts for internal noise, dropping stability as sigma rises. Finally, accumulated experience, lambda, stabilizes the state. This model suggests that belief is a product of managing internal noise and compounding experience. It is a matter of cognitive engineering. Individual belief is a quantifiable, dynamic state, the essential building block for a collective reality. Shared reality emerges when these individual nodes begin to network. This structural coherence is built on shared vocabularies and rhythms, remaining stable after emotional excitement fades. To stay stable without force, a coalition must satisfy a differential condition. Every participant's belief state must remain stable or increase over time. Participants grow toward the attractor at their own pace. If one node is forced into decline, network integrity is compromised. Mathematically, coercion is forcing a drop in an individual's belief state to manufacture artificial group alignment. Because forced alignment creates internal noise and instability, coercive systems are structurally doomed to fracture. Only mutual, upward growth sustains a network over time. But individual nodes eventually leave the network. How does a synchronization survive the death of its participants? The network preserves itself by generating a vertical hierarchy, the common tree, separating active participation from historical memory. The top layer tracks the Bugayev measure, active, living participation. Beneath it lies the Losev functional, the global anchor of accumulated past memory. This structure builds on Edmund Husserl's concept of the intentional horizon, the idea that every conscious act is framed by a background of past perspectives. ODTOE models this as a temporal asymmetry. Once a state is projected into the past layer, it becomes an invariant fact. Because the past cannot be reobserved or changed, it is structurally immune to the noise and decoherence that affect the living. New participants anchor themselves to this immutable past. They inherit a stable foundation that is independent of the fragility of any single individual. Long-lasting traditions are not just consensus in the present, they are networks that have successfully anchored themselves to a past layer that never decays. If this common tree continues to grow, attracting more nodes and deepening its past anchor, it approaches a theoretical limit. Imagine a state of perfect coherence involving an infinite number of participants. This limit is a structural invariant, a constant that the growing network approaches but can never fully reach. This structural limit is the absolute observer. This is a structural limit, the formal realization of what Immanuel Kant called a regulative ideal. It is a necessary horizon that provides a coordinate system for cooperative growth. It functions as the ultimate point of synchronization. Even if the limit is unreachable, the trajectory toward it is what gives the collective network its stability and purpose. An absolute ideal is a mathematical necessity. It provides the directional pressure required to keep a multi-agent system from drifting back into chaos. We can now move from theoretical models to historical data. This logarithmic plot represents the terminal scaling law. It calculates the lifespan of a movement based on its population size and its level of structural coherence. The baseline decay rate, T sub 0, is roughly 30 years, the length of one active generation. Early Christianity began with a small population, but its structural coherence, measured by the alignment of its practices and core configuration, was exceptionally high, estimated at 0.95. At these parameters, the equation projects a lifespan in the millions of years. This aligns with the empirical fact of a tradition that has survived for 2 millennia without structural dissolution. We can contrast this with the ideological totalitisms of the 20th century, which achieved mass scale but relied heavily on coercion. These systems forced alignment by suppressing individual belief. This violated our core stability condition, introducing massive internal noise into the network. While these regimes had massive initial populations, their underlying structural coherence was low, averaging around 0.6 due to internal friction and forced conformity. When we plot these values, the predicted lifespan plummets. The equation suggests these systems will collapse within decades, a prediction confirmed by the actual history of the 20th century. The data reveals a clear divide. While coercion can force a large-scale alignment quickly, its structural instability ensures a short lifespan. Long-term survival belongs to high coherence networks that allow every individual to grow.